I feel like me reviewing the Alien vs. Predator movies is the way Judgment Day is described in Terminator 3. It was inevitable. There was no escaping it at all. So, here we are. Let's get started with the first one. Alien vs. Predator came out in 2004 and pits the xenomorph alien against the Predator alien. So fans have been eagerly awaiting this for some time. So who's the man you get when you want to combine two of the biggest horror science fiction franchises together? Why, the same guy that made Mortal Kombat and Resident Evil, Paul W. Anderson. Yeah, because apparently Fox didn't want quality when it came to this movie. But anyway, the movie follows a team of researchers led by Charles Bishop Wayland, played once again by Lance Henriksen from Aliens and Alien 3, as they find a pyramid that's underneath the ice in Antarctica. So the team heads down there to try to do research on it, but they soon find out that this is a breeding ground for xenomorphs that the Predators use to basically train up-and-coming hunters. Every 100 years for some reason, which I'm gonna completely ignore because it's so stupid, but basically, if the Predators prove themselves that they can hunt a xenomorph and kill them, then they can hunt anything, because xenomorphs are considered the ultimate trophies for Predators. So in this case, we have 3 Predators heading down to the pyramid, and soon the humans pretty much find themselves caught in a battle between the xenomorphs and the Predators. So that's the movie. There's not much else to it. So you guys know this about me. I love Alien. I love Aliens. I love Predator. And I even like Predators. Everything else when it comes to the solo movies ranges from mediocre to bad to awful. But I have a confession to make. As much as I adore Alien, Aliens, and Predator, this is the first movie I saw in both franchises, and I am ashamed to admit that. It came out when I was in middle school, I was 13 years old, everybody was talking about it, and I went and saw it because I just wanted to be popular. I wanted to know what everyone at school was talking about with Alien vs. Predator. And even back then, I don't remember liking it that much. And then months later, I eventually saw Alien, Aliens, and Predator for the first time and fell in love with those. But first, a little backstory on how this crossover came to be, because earlier this year, when I reviewed King Kong vs. Godzilla, I said that when you do a crossover, it kind of means that you've run out of ideas. Similar to how Freddy vs. Jason exists, because, I mean, they sent Jason Voorhees to outer space, so they pretty much gave up at that point, and Freddy Krueger was running out of ideas too. But you know what? The idea of Alien vs. Predator actually makes a lot more sense than Freddy vs. Jason or King Kong vs. Godzilla, because this is not the first time these two characters have been crossed over. Now, obviously, there was the tease with the xenomorph skull in Predator 2, but there have been a lot of decent to good Alien vs. Predator material that has come out since then, like the video games, comic books. I even enjoyed the 2010 video game of Alien vs. Predator. It's not great, but it's a nice way to kill off time, and it's got some really cool gore. Climbing walls and ceilings as a xenomorph is disorienting, but hey, it's fun. I enjoy it. So it was only a matter of time before we eventually got a movie, and I already talked about my first experience of seeing Alien vs. Predator, but I never really rewatched it until now to do this review, because since then, Alien vs. Predator has had this weird reputation of being a cult classic, similar to how Paul W. Anderson's Mortal Kombat has gotten a reputation of being a cult classic, or Predator 2, if you want to drive the point back home. So I just didn't get it. I've heard a lot of people say this movie is not too bad, and eventually I knew I had to review these movies, so I figured to rewatch Alien vs. Predator, and it actually isn't as bad as I remember it. Now, it's not a good movie at all, but I will say it's probably the most tame Paul W. Anderson movie I've seen. I haven't seen a lot of his filmography, but from the things I've seen, this is probably the one where he actually tries to do something with the material, because it's Alien and Predator. It's 2 of the greatest science fiction horror movies ever made, so you gotta at least put some effort into it, and I feel like in the beginning of the movie, he actually tries to give us some characters. Now, I didn't particularly like them. Not that they were unlikable, but there wasn't too much to them. The only 2 characters that we really get a sense of are Bishop and your main character, Alexa. Everyone else there are pretty much types. You have this one guy who's recording the entire expedition for his kids back home. You got this Italian archaeologist who seems to know everything about what's going on. And then you have a bunch of faceless mercenaries and some other people that I really can't remember for the life of me. The acting's actually not too bad from what I remember, and the actress who plays Alexa is probably the best character in the movie because you do know a little bit about her. She's the one that takes initiative, she's the toughest one of the bunch, and by the time you get to the end of the movie, as stupid as it gets, she proves herself to be a badass. Not in the level of Ripley, but I mean, for this movie, it's serviceable. However, despite all the time he spent trying to develop these characters, all the time he spent trying to make a more serious movie, all that time trying to try with this movie, once the Xenomorph and Predator actually fight each other, Paul W.S. Anderson just lets loose and breaks out all of his cliches that you see in a lot of his movies. Like the very cheap-looking CGI, the action scenes in slow motion that are ripped off from other movies, and the characters pretty much become fodder for the Xenomorphs and even the Predators to kill, which is another problem with the movie. Paul W.S. Anderson, I don't think, really understands how these two creatures function. And I especially had a problem with the Predators more than anything. I know I have Predator on the mind because I just finished reviewing the 4 Solo movies, but I feel like it's important to point this out because this is more of a Predator movie than anything else. So the Xenomorphs just happen to be fodder for the Predators to kill off. When the first action scene takes place, it's set in an Antarctic village, which reminds me very much of John Carpenter's The Thing. And during the action, you go, okay, it's bloodless, sure, because it's PG-13, but so far he gets the idea of how the Predators function. The guys have guns, they're shooting all over the place like maniacs, so obviously the Predators are going to consider them threats and kill them. And I don't have a problem with the Predators ignoring the fact that they're supposed to skin and take their skulls, because they're on a mission to take out the Xenomorphs, not so much the humans. So once they actually get down to the pyramid, there is one guy who's wounded by the Predator. He falls down the tunnels that the Predators have made to get to the pyramid that the humans beforehand used to get to the pyramid themselves. So he's down there, he's injured. He sees 2 of the Predators just walk by and leave him alone because he's unarmed, he's injured. Naturally, the Predators would do that. But then the main Predator of the movie, Scar, just kills him, acts him off. We don't see any decapitation, we don't see any cuts, it just cuts away. And I went, okay, you did not have to do that. He was not armed at all. He was already hurt beyond belief. You didn't have to kill him right then and there. So I just had a real issue of how the Predators were handled. But in terms of the Xenomorphs, it looks like Paul W.S. Anderson gave a little more attention to detail to them than the Predators, because the Xenomorph animatronics, especially the animatronic of the Queen, looks impressive. That is until you get to the scenes where the Queen is CG, and it just looks like that cheap 2004 CGI. But the Xenomorph animatronics all look fantastic, and I'm actually wondering if these are the same animatronics that were used in Alien Resurrection, similar to how, with Jurassic Park 3, they used the same animatronic for the T-Rex that was used in The Lost World. So it looks like the same Xenomorph design from Resurrection, but it could not be. I could very well be wrong. But again, the Xenomorphs look really good. I wish I could say the same thing for the Predators, though. My problem with the Predators in this movie is that they look too bulky. They're built more like wrestlers than the slim and athletic hunters that they were in Predator and Predator 2, which leads into the first action scene between one of the Predators and the main Xenomorph grid, is that the filming of it is not too well done, and you want to see some really badass stunts with these two, but because the Predator is so bulky, it just plays out more like a wrestling match than anything. When the Predators, in my opinion, should act a lot more like Batman, where they've got a lot of tech at their disposal, they've got blades, they should be kicking the Xenomorphs' asses. Now, to be fair, these are new Predators that need to hunt a Xenomorph to basically earn their title as Predators, so I can kind of let it pass that they have some trouble with the Xenomorphs. But I just wish the Predators looked a little better. It's like in King Kong vs. Godzilla. Godzilla looks great, Kong not so much. I actually had a problem with the actual face. Ever since I rewatched this movie, I spent a few days wondering, what is it that I don't like about the Predator face this time around? Because it looks like the Predator, but there's something about it that's quite off. And I finally figured it out. The cheeks. The cheeks keep sticking out rather than being sucked in like you see in Predator and Predator 2, to the point where it just looks fake. When I watch Predator and Predator 2 and look at the Predators without their helmets on, I don't for a second say, that's an animatronic. I look at it and go, no, that is an alien creature that looks terrifying. In this movie, it's an animatronic of an alien creature that looks goofy. And speaking of goofiness, Paul W.S. Anderson really is not very imaginative in terms of action scenes. I feel like he's one of the most creatively bankrupt action directors out there, because the first time we see the facehuggers jump out and attack the humans, he bullet times the facehuggers. Like, they jump in slow motion and then it speeds back up to when they land on their faces, and it's just dull. There's a slow motion shot where the Predator uses a ninja star to cut a facehugger in half. Paul W.S. Anderson rips off a scene from Equilibrium where the main Predator Scar slices a xenomorph head clean off and no blood spills out, which I guess I should address the PG-13 rating. You gotta keep in mind, I saw this as my first Alien and Predator movie, and I happen to be 13. Sure, looking back at it, the idea of making a PG-13 movie with two R-rated properties that are R-rated for a reason is stupid, because the Predator series contains a lot of violence, especially the Predator, and while the Alien movies are violent as well, the facehuggers themselves are an allegory for space rapists. They basically rape your face and impregnate you, and then the chest bursters pop out and kill you. So that's pretty subjective, and the idea of making that PG-13 is kind of bizarre. But speaking from someone who did see this at 13 years old, I feel like kids are much smarter and tougher than we give them credit for. But if you have one of those parents like I did, then a PG-13 Alien Predator movie might be an okay start. And again, 13, it's the target demographic, so it's not harmful at all. It's just stupid overall. It tries to actually make a more serious movie with characters that you should care about, but you really don't, except for maybe moments with Alexa. And then by the time you get to the second half of the movie, it's just completely goofy and full of the Paul W.S. Anderson cliches. And sure, it does have a big, fun final battle between Alexa and Scar versus the Xenomorph Queen. But during that fight, you'll be asking a lot of questions, like, how is Alexa not freezing to death while wearing one layer of clothing? When the Elder Predator and the rest of the gang pop up after the Queen is defeated, were they just waiting around? Was their ship cloaked the whole time? Were they just watching Scar and Alexa take on the Xenomorph Queen and not coming in for the assist at all? And also, it should be noted that Paul W.S. Anderson rips off Close Encounters with this moment. Why do the Predators just leave Alexa in the freezing cold South Pole? Does she have a way to get back home? And then we get to the film's final shot where we see an alien-predator hybrid burst out of Scar's dead body. And you have to ask yourself a couple questions. Why did nobody detect this, first of all? How is this thing even alive? Because as we saw in the final battle, the Queen stabbed Scar right through the exact same spot where the Pred alien pops out. And why did the Queen even stab Scar to begin with if she knew that there was a chestburster inside of him? Because we all saw Alien 3. The xenomorph alien in that movie did not kill Ripley because it knew that she was carrying the next queen in her stomach. So it ultimately boils down to two explanations on how this possibly could happen. A, the queen has such precise aim that it knew where the chestburster was and just missed it. Or B, the most logical explanation, Paul W.S. Anderson didn't even try. I'm sure that's probably the more reasonable explanation. So, to wrap things up, Alien vs. Predator really isn't as bad as I remember it. I give it some props for at least attempting to be a more serious movie and a more intriguing movie, and from the viewpoint of this being my first Alien and Predator movie, it's a decent introduction, especially with it being PG-13, but at the halfway point it just gets completely goofy, and while it is fun, it is plagued with a lot of bad CGI and very lazy sound design. There's a lot of stock sound effects used throughout this movie, including a generic lion roar when it comes to the Predators. So it's just kind of lazy overall. I don't hate this movie whatsoever, and I had fun with it, but with better Alien and Predator movies out there, just don't waste your money on this one. It can be enjoyed, but this is coming off of 3 of the greatest science fiction movies out there, or 3 movies that are in my top 50 of favorite movies of all time. So just watch those movies instead of this crossover. Or if you want an Alien Predator crossover, just play any of the video games out there, or just play with your toys. That's the best I could say. Not terrible, but I didn't care for it all that much. And that's my review for Alien vs. Predator. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this next one. I don't want to do this. But I have to. I gotta be tough. I knew it was coming. There's no escaping it. Next week is gonna be my review for Aliens vs. Predator Requiem. I have avoided talking about this movie for so long, but the time has come. There's no turning back now. So now I want to hear what you guys think of Alien vs. Predator. Just let me know in the comments below if you've seen it and what you thought of it. Did this movie grow on you over time as being kind of a cult classic, or do you still think it's as bad as when you first saw it? Let me know down below. And until next time, I hope you enjoyed this review. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and of course leave a comment. Don't forget to support my Patreon page, follow me on social media, and until next time, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one.